Have you ever asked yourself why the universe brings someone into your life who feels perfect for you, yet you can't be together? Why it creates such a powerful connection only to place barriers between you that seem impossible to overcome? It's one of the deepest heartaches, to recognize a bond so real, so undeniable, and yet know somewhere inside that it can't be fulfilled. That no matter how much you both might want it, life's timing, circumstances, or even your own growth demands something else. And it's in these painful moments that we discover the universe doesn't always send people to stay with us. Sometimes it sends them to awaken parts of ourselves we would have never discovered otherwise. They become doorways to something new within us, not permanent companions on our journey. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychologist, offered profound insights into these mysterious connections. He didn't see them as cruel cosmic jokes or punishments, but as essential catalysts for our growth and evolution. Today, we'll explore Jung's wisdom on why these intense but unfulfilled connections might be some of the most important experiences of our lives. Jung believed that we are all connected through what he called the collective unconscious, a shared psychological foundation that contains universal patterns and images he called archetypes. These archetypes shape our experiences, our attractions, and our most powerful connections. When you meet someone and feel an immediate, almost supernatural recognition, that sense of "I've known you before," you're experiencing an archetypal connection. It's not just chemistry or compatibility, it's something far deeper. Your soul is recognizing something essential in theirs. These connections often feel destined, as if orchestrated by forces beyond our control. And in a way, they are. They arise from the depths of the unconscious, not from our rational minds or careful planning. They catch us off guard and sweep us away because they're meant to. They're designed to bypass our defenses and touch something primal within us. But here's where Jung's insight becomes particularly valuable. These connections aren't always meant to last. Sometimes their very purpose is to activate something in you that would otherwise remain dormant. They come not for permanence, but for awakening. Think about it. The person who changed you the most may not be the person who stayed the longest. They may be someone who briefly crossed your path, someone who couldn't remain in your life for reasons that felt agonizing at the time. And yet, after they left, you were never the same. Something had awakened in you that could never go back to sleep. This isn't accidental. In Jung's view, the soul craves growth above all else. Sometimes that growth requires a powerful trigger, a connection that burns so bright it illuminates parts of yourself you never knew existed. And sometimes, once that illumination has occurred, the connection has served its purpose. One of Jung's most profound contributions to psychology was his concept of the shadow. Those disowned parts of ourselves that we've rejected, suppressed, or never developed. The parts we hide, even from ourselves. The qualities we deny, the potentials we've abandoned. The aspects of our nature we've deemed unacceptable. Jung discovered something fascinating about human attraction. We are often magnetically drawn to people who carry our shadows, people who embody what we've rejected in ourselves, people who express what we've suppressed, people who live what we've denied. This is the mechanism of projection. When you meet someone and feel an overwhelming fascination, a deep recognition that goes beyond rational explanation, you may be encountering your own shadow reflected back at you. Their courage might mirror your buried bravery. Their expressiveness might reflect your silenced voice. Their freedom might echo your abandoned wildness. These connections feel so powerful precisely because they're touching parts of you that have been starved for attention. They're awakening aspects of yourself that have been buried alive. No wonder they feel so essential, so impossible to let go of. But here lies the painful paradox. These shadow-based connections often cannot last in their initial form. Why? Because their purpose isn't to give you a permanent relationship with someone else. Their purpose is to reunite you with yourself. The universe doesn't send these people to be your life partners. It sends them to introduce you to your denied self. And once that introduction has been made, once you've begun the work of reclaiming what was lost, the external relationship often transforms or dissolves. This doesn't mean the connection wasn't real or meaningful. On the contrary, it was so real and so meaningful that it had the power to change you at your core. But its purpose was transformation, not permanence. It was a bridge to cross, not a place to live. Jung was fascinated by alchemy, the medieval practice of attempting to transform base metals into gold. But he saw it as more than a failed scientific pursuit. He recognized in it a powerful metaphor for the transformation of the human psyche. In psychological alchemy, relationships become crucibles, containers in which transformation occurs through heat and pressure. The most powerful connections often create the most intense crucibles. They heat us to our boiling point. They pressure us beyond what we thought we could bear. And in that process, something new is forged within us. The relationships that hurt the most often transform us the most deeply. They break open the calcified layers of our defenses. They melt the rigid structures we've built to feel safe. They reduce us to our essence so that we can be reborn into something more authentic, more whole. When you meet someone who creates this alchemical reaction within you, the process isn't always gentle. It can feel like being torn apart, like dying to an old self while not yet knowing what new self will emerge. It's disorienting, painful, and sometimes terrifying. And yet, this process of psychological alchemy is essential to becoming who you truly are. Without it, parts of you would remain forever dormant. Without it, you might live an entire lifetime without ever touching your own depths, without ever facing your own truth. This is why Jung saw suffering not as a punishment, but as a pathway. Not as something gone wrong, but as something going exactly as it must for growth to occur. The fire that burns you is also the fire that purifies you. The connection that breaks your heart is also the connection that breaks open your capacity for authentic living. If you're finding value in these insights about meaningful connections and personal transformation, I'd love for you to be part of our growing community. Hit the subscribe button to join us on this journey of self-discovery and psychological understanding. Now, let's continue our exploration of these powerful connections. At the heart of Jung's psychology lies the process of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming your whole, authentic self. Not the self that was shaped by others' expectations, not the self that adapted to gain approval or avoid rejection, but your true self with all its complexity, contradictions, and unique potential. Individuation isn't easy. It requires facing parts of yourself you've avoided. It demands integrating aspects of your nature that seem to conflict. It means encountering the vastness of your own psyche, with all its light and shadow. And this process doesn't unfold in a straight line or on a predictable schedule. It happens in spirals, in leaps, in sudden revelations followed by long integrations. This is where those profound but impossible connections find their deeper meaning. They often appear at critical junctures in your individuation journey, moments when you're ready, whether you know it or not, to take a quantum leap in your development. These connections function as initiations. They mark the threshold between one stage of your growth and another. They shake you out of old patterns that no longer serve your evolution. They disorient you precisely so that you can reorient to a truer North Star. When someone comes into your life and awakens you in this way, their role is that of an initiator. They take you to the threshold and help you cross it. But once you've crossed, you must continue the journey without them. This is why these connections so often involve separation, because separated from them, you're forced to internalize what they awakened. If they stayed, you might forever look to them as the source of your awakening. You might never recognize that what they touched in you was always yours. You might never develop the capacity to stand in your own truth without external validation. The separation, painful as it is, forces you to make their gift truly your own. Jung understood that the self, the organizing center of the entire psyche, is always guiding us toward wholeness, even when the path feels broken. The connections that don't last are often orchestrated by this deeper wisdom, this innate drive toward becoming fully who we are meant to be. One of Jung's most profound contributions was his understanding that meaning is essential to human psychological health. We can endure almost any suffering if we can find meaning in it. What breaks us is not pain itself, but pain that seems pointless, random, or cruel. When a powerful connection ends or remains unfulfilled, we're often left searching desperately for meaning. Why did this happen? Why did they come into my life if we couldn't be together? Why awaken feelings this profound if they cannot be lived out in a shared life? Jung would suggest that finding meaning in these connections requires shifting our perspective. What if their purpose wasn't what you initially thought? What if they weren't meant to be your life partner, but rather a guide to a part of yourself you needed to reclaim? What if the love you felt wasn't meant to be channeled into a single relationship, but rather to crack open your capacity to live more lovingly in all areas of your life? When you can see the connection as meaningful for what it awakened, rather than mourning what it failed to become, healing begins. You can honor the profound role they played without remaining stuck in what might have been. You can carry forward what they helped you discover without carrying the weight of a failed expectation. This doesn't mean the grief isn't real or that you shouldn't honor it. Jung knew that genuine grief is an essential part of integrating loss, but he also knew that meaning transforms grief from a bottomless pit into a passage. Difficult, yes, but leading somewhere rather than nowhere. There are practical ways to honor what these connections awakened while continuing your journey. First, ask yourself what qualities or potentials they helped you discover in yourself. What did they mirror back to you that you hadn't fully claimed? What aspects of yourself emerged in their presence that you want to keep developing? Second, consider how you might channel the energy of the connection into creative expression, service, or personal development. The love that cannot be given directly to them can be transformed into other forms of giving. Third, recognize that they were a chapter in your story, not your entire story. They helped write an essential part of your becoming, but they don't determine how the rest of your story unfolds. That remains in your hands. Jung believed that every experience, especially the painful ones, offers an opportunity for deeper consciousness. The connections that feel most impossible often awaken us most profoundly. They break us open, yes, but they break us open to greater wholeness. Remember that the universe doesn't send people into your life randomly. Each significant encounter serves the development of your soul. The ones that hurt the most often matter the most. Not because suffering itself is the point, but because transformation often requires disruption of what came before. The person you can't be with may have been the very person you needed to meet in order to become who you're meant to be. Their role wasn't to complete your story, but to challenge you to write a more authentic one. Not to make you whole, but to show you that wholeness is what you seek. You carry their impact not as a wound to be endlessly nursed, but as a gift to be integrated. The fire of their presence forged something new in you. The pain of their absence creates space for what's next to emerge. Jung taught us that the soul's journey isn't about comfort or permanence. It's about growth, authenticity, and meaning. Some connections aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to change you forever. And in that change lies their true and lasting purpose. If this perspective resonates with you, if you've experienced one of these profound but impossible connections, know that you're not alone. Your experience is part of the great human journey toward consciousness and wholeness. The meaning you make from it becomes part of your unique contribution to that journey. The transformation you undergo becomes your gift to the world. Thank you for sharing this exploration with me. If these ideas speak to something in your own experience, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you found value in this perspective, consider sharing it with someone who might need these words today. Sometimes the meaning we find in our own pain becomes a light for others, still finding their way through theirs. Until next time, may you find meaning in every chapter of your story, especially the ones that didn't end as you expected. They may turn out to be the most important chapters of all.